Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you. Welcome to the Party Pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 172. I have Suat Muradov. We've already visited the other two Caucasus countries on this show, and so now we're going to talk about Azerbaijan. Suat has family in Azerbaijan, and he's currently working at the St. Louis University. How are you, Suat?
Fine, thank you for having me, Chris.
Yeah. First of all, I want to tell you, how did you get into Ayn Rand and all this stuff? Because I met you at Students for Liberty. So yeah.
Well, first of all, that was like 2020. COVID just struck, and then I was interested in bitcoins, cryptocurrencies. So that's how it started. We were engaged in Georgian Students for Liberty events, and then as a consequence to it, I followed up on many events they were organizing, and in the one that they held in Tbilisi. After many struggles to cross the border, we had finally made it there, and then after seeing what they have to offer, after seeing all this liberty movement that they are part of, and associating myself as a libertarian for long enough already back then, I decided that it's better I start up Azerbaijani chapter for SFL, and that's how we got there. So all these topics, and then as I studied in US, I got more and more involved.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so has your message in Azerbaijan been received pretty well?
What do you mean, sorry?
Yeah, how's the Liberty message getting? What kind of reception is the Liberty message getting in Azerbaijan?
Our team is growing. We've been seeing a lot of brilliant guys, young women and men, both. Trying to project their own versions of liberty, and I think for Gen Z, this is a hot topic right now. Like, we are all into questioning the nature of authority, understanding what is a healthy skepticism and what is unhealthy skepticism or about power in our country, and we are actually trying to get this message across. Yeah,
that's good. Yeah. Well, obviously, I've had a couple people on here talk about Armenia. I've had and I've had a Rockley talk about, he's from Tbilisi, as I prefer calling it Sakkart Velo to differentiate between from the American state of Georgia. But how does what's the overall freedom situation? Because usually on these freedom indexes, I see Azerbaijan definitely as being the lowest of the three. Is that pretty accurate or not? Or maybe you can't say that.
It depends on what metrics. I would say the most of the metrics relate to the trade barriers, really, because Azerbaijan is Azerbaijan is not part of WTO. It already makes WTO,
the World Trade Organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that being said, we can impose any tariffs. We can expose our own, let's say, limitations for trade. That's already dipping us a little on that side. So, and when you were looking at those organizations like Freedom House or the ones that are general freedom and liberty related metrics, they kind of include that economic point there as well. But even talking from rights and freedoms perspective, I would say the situation has gotten better than worse in terms of the ranking and the scores lately. I would say it is a little bit difficult to. There have been like challenges before with with expression of speech in Azerbaijan, but I think it's getting easier as we have social media penetration growing. Like we have active population on internet, and it's pretty much not censored. So that being said, it's quite positive that we are able to form unions and we're able to form organizations, assemblies that are affecting public opinion as effectively as the government channels, and maybe better than them.
Yeah, certainly. Speaking of trade, what are the trading partners? I suppose, do they trade with Russia, or do they trade with Iran, or do they?
Azerbaijan,
Yeah. Yes.
mostly European Union, like Italy, countries like Romania, who need oil and gas and petrochemicals products. Like we are usually known for that industry, so that's why they are our main trading partners. But of course, we trade a lot with Turkey. We trade a lot with Russia. Iran is a really great partner. Georgia is a really amazing partner in that capacity. We are working with China, Indonesia. I think Azerbaijan is trying to build like bilateral relations rather than
Yeah.
be part of something global, and I think the world is also going there today after COVID, especially. We see like a lot of slowing down. Maybe you have heard of the term globalization. The globalization is actually dipping in that case.
Yeah, and don't they? Isn't there? I think there are also several other organizations. Isn't there an organization that comprises all the countries that are on the Caspian? Because Azerbaijan's on the Caspian Sea, which of course is really just a big landlocked lake.
It is.
Because you can't go anywhere else, but the water vaporizes. So it's, you could also say it's a landlocked ocean. But yeah, so,
It is.
and
It
and,
is.
it's, and it is and it is slightly below sea level as well. So yeah,
The Azerbaijani side is like minus 30 meters. I don't know.
yeah,
It's like must be 400 feet. I don't know. Maybe less.
that's about 100 feet.
100 feet. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We do. I don't know specific organizations that are
Yeah,
building that trade relations between these countries. If that would be an organization, that would definitely be
yeah,
Russian organization, considering that we had this clashes between classifications of Caspian Sea. Azerbaijan claims it's sea, international maritime waters. Iran claims it's a lake. That has different repercussions for how you divide the resources that come out of Caspian Sea. Like we had to like negotiate that for a long time, and then I think we settled down with a Russian proposal like very recently, like
yeah,
less than 5 years ago. And I think it's not on a so that even though there is an organization, I'm sure it is intergovernmental and it's definitely a Russian mediated convention or something of that sort
yeah,
that actually regulated it. So that's where we are at that point.
yeah. Has anybody ever thought of or tried to build a canal so you could connect the Caspian Sea to the, maybe you'd have to connect it with some of the rivers, but so you could connect the Caspian Sea to the rest of, because if a boat's in the Caspian Sea, it's not going to get to the Indian Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean or even the Black Sea. Has anybody ever thought about trying that, or not? Or maybe a canal from the Black Sea to the Caspian Sea, although it would have to be awfully long.
We used to have those, but those are all Russian
Yeah.
rivers like Volga, Don, and then it
Okay.
goes to Black Sea. But I think that was part of, um, I don't know, it is very non-navigable in some portions. It's not like Mississippi, it's not like
Yes.
Missouri River. Even if you have a ship and even if you have
Yeah. Mhm.
moving your trade, at some point you will have to bump into like evergreen situation.
Oh
So
yes.
you don't want to do that with rivers of that small size. So what you want to do is better use the steamboat that will deliver the cargo from Central Asia to Azerbaijan, we have that Turkmenistan bay that they have built for that
Yeah.
reason. I think we Chinese are thinking of this, and definitely transport connections should be built within the region as well after this war situation stabilizes. We need to establish those routes over Armenia that is actually going to Turkey and then to the rest of the world. So yeah, there are many discussions over that, and it's really hot topic.
Incidentally, from what I've heard, the situation in Turkmenistan, isn't it something almost like North Korea? From what I hear, it's pretty unfree. Is that right or not? Or maybe you don't hear anything about it.
Well, it's pretty hard to get information from them. Like we occasionally see those videos where
Okay.
they do um I don't know, they have elected someone, I don't know, elected or not, but I know they have new president, not the older guy, like very young one, and they claim he will be the next dictator. And I don't know. It's very hard to get information from them because they are kind of disconnected from world in that sense. I mean, the internet should be very censored there, so hard to know from them. I don't
Yeah.
really see many Turkmens even here in US. So, but I see a lot of Kazakhs. I see a lot of Uzbeks. So you can get hold of them. You can know what's
Yeah.
happening there. Turkmens, not really. Maybe some people know in Washington. I should ask them, but I don't see them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like they're not able to get out. So, this is having been over there, this is an absolutely positively beautiful place in the world to go. I mean, you see beautiful mountains and rivers. If you like natural beauty, it's certainly a place to go. Uh, so and I have to say, I was over there in 2022. I did not go to Azerbaijan because they still had some coronavirus restrictions, but the other two countries didn't have them. What's been going on with Azerbaijan or Armenia? And I don't know. Let's go back maybe 150 years, or maybe the history goes back further than that. What's the deal here? I always say when in doubt, zoom out. So let's see, because I don't think war just starts yesterday. It's always got a past behind it.
Well, if we go that back to the history, I would say it goes back to the creation of nation states in this region. So, nation state as a terminology was not around for much here. I would say that's quite a recent phenomenon. I would say that's a 20th century term. So we were really ruled by dynasties. I mean, the region, and Azerbaijan was ruled by Safavids, and then Khanates. Same with Armenia and Georgia.
Yeah.
So once we gained that national um, aspirations of, I mean, building a state that will be a state with the legislation that will rule and that will govern uh, to get the political goals for for the entire nation. That was quite new, and honestly, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia have been fighting in trilateral way over the land and stuff in 1910s. So
Yeah.
um, that all comes because
Mhm.
of the weakening force of Russian empire. And let's face it, if Russia didn't lose the World War the First, all this would happen in the later term.
Yeah.
But the movement was already there, and I would say it started earlier in Armenia and much later in Azerbaijan. So the creation of Azerbaijani state was referred to, I would say, 1870s, 1880s
Yeah.
thinking. And in Armenia, I would say it was started earlier. So that process, that national awakening process, those were already evolving. And then suddenly, when there is that vacuum of power, just got hotter. And because Russians like seized control over the territory very soon without giving it 5 or 10 years. Of course, they would not. Like we had USSR building up, and then Soviet Russia tried to act clever without obvious control over territories, and then um, they just followed their interests in the region, trying to not give too much leverage to one side over another. But they definitely saw ally in Armenia over Azerbaijan, and then they saw threat in Azerbaijan over Armenia. That actually affected how the situation went down from there on. Like after the Soviets were um, established, and then they tried to be very strong in the region. And in my view of the history is this is how it started. So Russian Empire collapsing, nation states, the smaller nations, they had their process for national revival, and then they wanted to have their first republics established. And then that's what happened is political alliances are built. Russians had their own interests in the region. Turks had their own interests in the region. Iran had their interests in the region, and then this strategic political chess played out the way we can see it played out.
Yeah, and also this is also a region though where the Russians and the Turks would fight a lot of wars, and the Russians and the Iranians would fight a lot of wars. So it become and I know also there's a large number of Azeris in northwest Iran, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's definitely a point of discussion when we are discussing South Caucasus.
yeah,
So Azerbaijan had like a big chunk of its, uh, let's say, population always uh, to the south of today's Azerbaijan, and we historically call those lands Azerbaijan rather than north. Of course, these are all Azerbaijan, but I would say more Azerbaijanis are actually living down south in Iran. The territory that used to be ruled by dynasties have been actually dividing Azerbaijanis because of the nature of wars. So the way it worked out is Azerbaijan had two parts, North and South Azerbaijan. We have that Arax River that actually was established as the border between them, and that happened like as a result of the Russian victory over Iranians. And then I would say um, I would say the dynasty was Gajari dynasty back then, and as we had those Russo-Iranian wars unfold, um, then the concession was that Russians actually conquered all the way to the South Azerbaijan. Almost entire industrial heartland of Iran was there, and what they agreed on is to become, let's say, positive on peace terms, where Russia would get the northern part of Azerbaijan, while southern Azerbaijan that Russia also conquered, they would give it back to Iran, so that they still have some sort of peace among each other, so that they don't have to fight all the time, right? So that was the peace agreement of Turkmenchai in 1828. Um, and before that, Russians easily overtook other Azerbaijani Khanates, like one by one, Ganja, Baku,
yeah,
Lankiran, so all of them. Like
yeah,
that's the history behind it. And then they also got Tabriz, that's south in Iran. So they were weak. Iranian army was not as strong as Russian, so they had to retreat, and then this peace negotiations happened the way that
yeah,
split Azerbaijan in between in two.
yeah. And of course, which alphabet do they use there, or do they use several?
Arabic. They use Arabic
Okay.
numerals. They use Arabic symbols, but
Yeah.
they have their own language. They speak Farsi. They speak Persian.
Yeah. But I mean in Azerbaijan though.
Oh, in
Yeah.
Azerbaijan we use Latin.
Okay. Because because the other two countries in the Caucasus region both have completely unique alphabets that are not used anywhere else. I mean, the Armenians have their alphabet, and the Kartvelians or the Georgians have their alphabet. So I just was asking. So yeah.
Yeah, the so Azerbaijan has been using Arabic for most of its
Yeah.
history because of our religion, and the same reason I would say we can also attribute Georgians and Armenians using their alphabets to exactly the same reason. So they were having manuscripts in those scriptures that are being used since I think 2 millennia. So because they were Christians, because they were following those
Yeah.
specific type of Christianity called Gregorianism, uh, I think they had to read it from their own. So they had manuscripts that had to be messaging their population. I wouldn't say most of population would know how to write in it. Mostly the people from, I would say, churches, maybe even I don't know, episcopes were the main people who would write and read. So the religious communication, I would say, played a big part in how Azerbaijan and the other regional nationalities they have been using their alphabet. So yeah, I would say it is. Azerbaijan also used to have religious scripture as a communication style, but we eventually changed it as we grew more secular. So Azerbaijan is the
Yeah.
only, I would say, not only, but is the most secular Muslim majority country since then. Like we had all those I would say. Um, so we were influenced by West much earlier than other part of the Islamic world, and we introduced like things like opera, theater much earlier than others. So that's all due to uh, our adoption of those um, values, those I would say critical adoptions of Western culture, which also pertained to Turkey later. So Turkey also followed our footsteps as we did that, and they also followed with when Ataturk became the president, and he also almost entirely wiped out that older scripture of Arabic manuscripts. So religious communication became a little bit outdated, obsolete. Latin became more important. So I would say that is the part of history that is important to note behind this alphabet issue.
Yeah. I just thought, it's just interesting because so often language is what creates a national identity. People unify around a language, and they'd rather, if they're going to have a tyrant, they'd rather have a tyrant who speaks their language than a tyrant who doesn't. So, or whatever government, it's but yes,
Yeah, language wise, I would say Azerbaijan has never had one specific language that we spoke
okay.
in the area. I don't even when we look at like back history, like during the time of Caucasian Albania, we still had 27 different tribes that all spoke different language. Like if you think about it, there is like a theory of a flatland and mountainous regions being different from each other in terms of linguistic barrier formation. So the more mountains you have, the more nationalities, the more languages you will evolve over time because they cannot meet each other. There is no, considering that we had no means of communication in the ancient times. So um, the flatlands, the people who would live in the flatter areas, would be talking to each other and form one rigid nationality. So, so because most of the parts in the flat Azerbaijan, I think, so they were still many tribes living in them. It was actually difficult to form one language until one, let's say, ethnonym predominates over others, and then
Yes.
that's how it's evolved.
Yeah. Well, and as you were talking about religion too, often, you go back, 300 or 400 years, maybe the only book in the house was the Bible. That was where the schools usually were, and where the people who kept these traditions going. It's been, where you learned all this stuff. So yeah, that, speaking of how secular. So can I get arrested for blasphemy in Azerbaijan? I know I can certainly get arrested for it in Pakistan.
Well, you can be well, it depends what you define as blasphemy, because in Sweden we saw the guy from Iraq burning Quran and then getting killed for it, of
Yeah.
course not by the government, of course by some radicals. If you do something like that in Azerbaijan, most probably that will be something bad. You will not like receive that positive reaction. But I think legal wise, you can tell what you think about Islam in Azerbaijan. But I think like open disrespect, a radical, approach to religion is quite untolerated in Azerbaijan. So we are quite emphasizing the importance of tolerance in religious and ethnic matters, like the ethnicity discrimination. Those are the things we're trying not to appraise at any costs. We are trying to emphasize on multi-ethnic and multi-diverse
Yeah.
values, and the respect to the values of other nationalities, other religious groups. I mean, you can see Jewish living in Azerbaijan for centuries. You can see
Yeah.
Christians who are still living in Azerbaijan, like there are mountainous regions where they're still practicing their Christianity, which is different from the other groups that are Slavic, or I would say more Catholic. So I haven't seen any radical approaches and any radical scenes for that pertain to religion in Azerbaijan, and that's why I assume if you do something that is way off the culture and way off the daily practices, yeah, you can see something happening to you, but legal wise. But I think just expression of your opinion about the other religious trait, ritual, I haven't ever met situations where it was like people would be
Yeah.
arrested for it.
So, getting back to it, so, it looks like to me that, there was a, occasional independence, for the three countries after the fall of the Tsar. And then for a while they unified together and said we got the Trans-Caucasian Republic, but then they decided to go their own way, and immediately you had a war between Armenia and Azerbaijan right there. And I know in Tbilisi they actually celebrate, they celebrate 1918 as their Independence Day, not the fall of the Soviet Union. But so what happened there? You've got these sections. I mean, Azerbaijan has this, one section over on the west that's Nakhavichan, I believe that is.
Which part? Sorry.
The section on the west, is it Nakhavichan or
Nakhchivan, yeah,
Nakhchivan? Yeah,
Nakhchivan.
yeah, which is another part, and then you have this little strip of Armenia coming down in between, where
Hmm.
Armenia has a short border with Iran, and then you have the much larger section of Azerbaijan that's on the east side. But
Hmm.
then you also had Nagorno-Karabakh, which was actually an enclave, a little section of Armenians that, Armenia would put it on Armenian maps, and apparently Armenians always lived there, but that was recently evacuated. The Armenians left. It, would you, first of all, what happened back after the fall of the czars? I mean, was that the first time we had some, and what brought peace then? I mean, it's
Yeah, regarding the historicity of the conflict, I would say it goes to 20th century. Like before then, I wouldn't say we had much clash between the ethnicities. Like we were,
yeah,
um, honestly, we did have like Armenians living in Azerbaijan, and especially living in the area of Nagorno Karabakh. We had those
yeah,
uh, small formations in Karabakh called Melik Khanats. So so there are people even today you can see with their family name being uh, Melik Aslanov, Aslanyan, or Melik Shahnazarov. These types of family names. Those are coming from uh, those forms of governance that were established back in, I would say, 17th, 18th century. Maybe it's even before. I did not study them a lot. But we had those formations like Khachen. One of them is have been Khachen. I know for the fact that before Russian invasion, they were practicing some sort of Christianity um, that would pertain to Gregorianism, um, but it was not necessarily Armenian version of religion. I would say it. So what happened later, as Tsar have conquered Azerbaijan, they actually what they did, they have abolished that denomination entirely. Like Albanian Christianity, like disappeared overnight in 1836. You can Google it. So what happened then is people who were Albanian, so who were following Albanian
yes,
Christianity, they had to switch, and they switched to Armenian denomination and Armenian Gregorianism. And most of the people living there in the area are actually different from the mainland Armenians. If you check by their genetics, if you check by the way they speak, uh, they are actually, most of them are actual converts from Albanian Christianity, that version of uh,
yeah,
Christianity, to Armenian version of Christianity. Because why this is important to mention is when we are discussing that Armenia, for example, existed for a long time, I agree fully. The problem is they are missing that element. It was not an ethnic state.
yeah,
It was a religious state. It was called such as, let's say, uh, like if we are talking about people of Hebrew, we are talking about Jewish people. We don't talk about nationality, right? We are talking about nationality based on religious rituals, based on religion, basically, right? So those are we call them um, ethnotheist ethnotheist countries or something like that. So basically, Armenians as a group were not ethnic group. So today's Armenians are hikes. Have you heard of their how they call themselves? They call themselves hikes.
yeah. Well, hikes. Yeah, hike is also a very common male name in Armenia. Yeah,
Yes, and hike is actually one of the
and I should say that they call their country in their own language. They call it Hayastan. Yeah,
highest.
yeah.
Hike was son of Noah, so one of the sons, I
Okay.
think. And that religious history actually is what combines them together. And I would say in Armenia today, if you are talking about their history, you cannot really separate religion from them, because that's
Yeah.
basically how they define themselves, how they identify, and where their roots they believe to go to. And in that being said, I even think that most of Armenians, when referring to Armenia, the historic Armenia, they believe that they all should be, or I don't know if they agree with this or not, but in my opinion, it was not an ethnic state. It was definitely a religious state, and it would combine many different tribal or communal groups that would be uh, following Armenian version of Christianity, the Armenian Gregorianism. So one of those communities was Hais. So the people of Haik, they are still calling themselves as such, and they are proud of this. And
Yeah.
I think this is playing a major role in what is supposedly their political aspirations. So if we go back to that discussion of how this uh, stuff unfolded, so people living in the area, they were definitely different from hike people. They just so what happened over time as Russians abolished this denomination of Albanian Catholicism, or I don't
Yeah.
remember how they call it. Many Albanian, let's say former Albanian believers, they have converted to Armenianism because that was very close. They used the same scripture. So there are claims that there is an Albanian manuscripts, but we haven't found them. So I tend to believe they were also reading their religious readings from Armenian sources, considering that they knew how to write in Armenian. Uh, that being said, I think yes, we had very very established Christian community in that area of Nagorno Karabakh, but I would not necessarily say that most of them were the same high people that
Yeah.
all claim to be, and most of them actually came with Russian invasion of Azerbaijan. And if you check the immigration stats, the city of what we call Khankendi, and which is actually Stepanakert today, it was
Yeah.
established by Russians, and it was fully sponsored. Uh, so the immigration to that land was sponsored by Russians. So it is really not like that historic to describe like Nagorno Karabakh as fully Armenian, because their major city has been built just a century ago, and it was built due to immigration and the jobs that were available for the military of Russian army, and uh, most of the jobs are actually agrarian there. So I would not say that was a big city, big communal stronghold in the region. I would say the bigger communal stronghold was Shusha, city of Shusha, that was built 18 in 18th century, and it had all this older cultural elements to it. And I don't see that region was even like bigger part of industrialization or urbanization. That was pretty agrarian area where communities would live like in peace, and there wouldn't be any fights over resources before. And even today, if we are talking about Nagorno Karabakh as a region that is being fought, just that region has no don't doesn't have many natural resources either. If you check, this is like more of a cultural war, right? It's not really uh material war. It's not, it's more um so it's more like morality based questions, and let's say it's more like legal question rather than, I would say, um, a resource conflict. that we see today in many other parts of the world. So it's kind of the clash of nations that aroused from
Yeah.
historic preconditions.
Yeah. I was looking up, that was what they call Caucasian Albania. Yeah, it was part of these countries, and you've used the word Gregorian several times. Is that Is that in Gregorian, or what does that word mean exactly? Gregorian is just
That's just a Christian denomination.
okay, like
It's
Pope Gregory. Yes.
it's kind of orthodox.
Okay.
So orthodox is usually many versions of it. Like we have Hellenist Orthodoxism, we
Yeah.
have Pravoslavism that Slavic nations
Yeah.
do. Yeah, so it's kind of Orthodox. Armenian or Georgian Orthodox is also how they call it. So
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to
that,
make sure because Pope Gregory, but he later invented what was called the Gregorian calendar, which was actually different, which is part of the reason why the Orthodox feasts like Easter are different from the
oh yeah.
Western Christianity, as I'd call it. So yeah, I know there was a massacre of Armenians in Shusha and around back in the 1920s. So this was all there. All seems to be this just is you think so it's more over religion than language because just Muslim versus Catholic thing or Muslim versus Christian thing. It sounds like.
So which year you're talking about, by the way? Are we talking
Going
like
back to 1918 or something like that, or after the fall of the Tsar, but really before things got consolidated into the Soviet Union.
oh,
Because
you're talking about early 1920s, right?
yeah, because it was interesting looking at the history of Stepanakert. Yeah, it's a relatively new city, but that was the capital of Nagorno-Karabakh until the evacuation, I guess. So yeah,
So yeah, there is this story on so how things unfold like during the um so those periods like were really turbulent periods, like 1917 to 1924. So these 7 years, yeah, you can see a lot of things happening. Like you can check 31st March pogroms of Azeris as well. Like we have also had like estimated 150,000 people die in 1 2 nights. So these stuff are kind of like I am trying to check them like through many resources, through many legit sources that are actually describing what happened. I don't know why you rarely find documents or people who have documented all these acts of terrorism and uh, stuff happening, and then ethnic clashes would be rising up. So those periods were quite ethnically emotional, I would say, and the versions of how many people being killed is always different. Like some, for example, if you are talking about Armenian pogroms in Shusha, you will find one source that will say it was just 50 people that dead, and you
okay,
will find the one that says 30,000. you know that is very shady part of Azerbaijani, Armenian, and Georgian histories. Like it is so much undocumented that it's very hard to
yeah,
tell anything about it. And it's really the matter of political agenda and political will to use it uh, however you want. Because the earlier you go to undocumented historical events, the more it is like giving a leeway for yourself to use it for your propaganda, or you can use it for your agenda to push something. Definitely things were hot back then. People could clash, but what I think is was the case is that people were not on the same page with the politicians. It would be very easy to make things um, difficult or to cause conflicts, uh, given that um, it's been like information was difficult to obtain. And I also suspect a lot of Russian uh, how to say, like if you check these stories, you will not find just one sides of these stories, and you will not find just one case where like it's Armenians killed by Azerbaijanis. You will also find the other stories where Armenians killed Azerbaijanis, and like each side will have their specific, how to say, their specific points, or the massacres that they all claim to be legit, and they are legit, they have happened. um, like for the fact, I know in Guba, like I know people from Guba, that's in north of Azerbaijan, whose family have been almost wiped out. Like they had only one grandpa left. The rest were just killed by Russians and Armenians, not even just Armenians. So things were quite turbulent back then. Um, I would say because Russia needed to secure its stronghold in the region, and some Turkish forces were also moving independently from the Ottoman uh, rulers, to establish this dominance, establish some um, political presence, military presence in the area. You can see a lot of things happening, and then you will not really find a lot of documents on what really happened. Uh, my understanding of those years is like it was the most shady period of maybe our recent history. Um, but yes, I mean, things that happened in Shusha, things that happened in Guba, things that happened in Baku, they were the reflection of political vacuum in those years, between, I would say, uh, Turks and Russians. So it's really hard to tell much about those periods.
Certainly. So after the Soviet Union was established, there seemed to be relative peace there until and things just got along, I guess, because the iron fist of the Soviets. Although the Soviet Union and even Russia would long have this history of meddling in various ethnic groups and attempting forced migrations and trying to stir up hatreds among each other. I had this letter here, was posted by that Angela Matnatsen, and this was written in 1920, but it just recognizes that the Declaration of the Revolutionary Committee of the Azerbaijan SSR on recognition of Nagorno-Karabakh, Zangezur, and Nakhichevan as
Mhm.
as an integral part of the Armenian SSR. And I know and now both of those sections are both under the dominion of Azerbaijan. And I mean, and now that you have this separate section of Azerbaijan, is Azerbaijan going to try to bring those two together by, I don't know, creating a corridor? It's never a good situation when you have a country divided like this. It usually does. It usually ends up being resolved one way or another. And when you have two parts of a country divided like this, and unless Armenia allows them to pass, I mean,
Yeah. Uh, yeah, we're talking about Angela Mnasakanyan posting that letter
yeah,
on declaration of the Azerbaijan SSR, right?
yeah,
Um, there is this thing. The when we are checking the person who is like Narimanov is very famous in Azerbaijan and very controversial persona, to be honest. Some people say he actually was the person behind the Nagorno Karabakh staying in Azerbaijan,
oh,
and some people say he was the person who gave up Zangezur to Armenia.
yeah,
And my my understanding of the history and of the time back then is that uh, we actually were in a war with Armenia, and we were not much able to protect or fight off many areas, especially when we talk about the areas of clash like Karabakh, Nakhichevan, uh, and Zangezur. Um, the bottom line here is uh, these documents, like we have the same copy, we have similar copy um, of the declaration that would actually say that would actually state like that was by Stalin, and it's actually an official translation saying that Stalin actually approved the retention of Nagorno-Karabakh within Azerbaijan. It's not like it's being transferred. It
Yeah.
was actual retention of Nagorno-Karabakh
Yeah.
inside Azerbaijan, and we actually attribute that to Narimanov as well. So, because of those documentations of the time are not really detailed, so we have these small bits and pieces of papers that come around, circulate, and are being used as let's say political weaponry of the time. And honestly, my opinion is back then these pieces of documents were not really grand at the time. What I think was more important is the negotiational process, the political vision of Soviet Russia regarding Azerbaijan and Armenia, for how they saw this would unfold in case the collapse happened, which it did happen. So what I think happened is uh, Azerbaijan definitely uh, discussed and definitely agreed with Armenia on the Zangezur issue. Like it was not forcefully transferred. I would say the bottom line here is that we we agreed with the fate of Zangezur being part of Armenia, and Armenians agreed with the fate of Karabakh being in Azerbaijan back then.
Yep.
Since 1920s to 1980s, you will not find any document where Armenians really claimed Karabakh until we had that Stepanakert protest in 1982, 1985, I think, or no, 85. That was 85. Uh, so it's basically, it was like an issue settled. And so we are okay and they are okay until in 80s, they claimed it. And this actually spurred a new round of problems. And regarding Nakhichevan, we don't actually need any uh, circulation of unofficial documents. We have the official contract we call Kars contract, where actually Turkish Republic and USSR they agreed on Nakhichevan staying part of Azerbaijan, but as a enclave, as a self-autonomous republic that could have it their own I don't know, legislative body and their own um, uh, constitution. So this being case, I would say Nakhichevan, even after uh, USSR collapse, it stayed like that. Like it was self-governing body until like I don't know, last year or 2 years ago. So it's been like an agreement in 1921. And so regarding Nakhichevan, I think it is pretty much documented. But these two, I would say they are quite shady. And the bottom line is we agreed on giving up,
Yeah.
like they agreed on giving up Karabakh. So it's not like one-sided issue. It's not just Stalin orchestrated something. It's kind of there was this
Yeah.
there was this social contract between these parties that this is how we are gonna end up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I see it happening, and it's how I see it happened at the time.
But then fighting broke out when the Soviet Union collapsed and Nagorno-Karabakh became declared its independence and was a de
It was even
facto
before collapse.
what? Yeah. Or even before the collapse. Yeah. So what do you think can be done to, bring peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan?
I think these wounds don't heal overnight. I think
Oh no.
it's the idea of um, I think this is like more mentality and mindset problem, so that needs time. Definitely, psychologies are damaged for, I don't know, for some people like for decades, for some people forever. Um, and considering that entire two generations of people have been brought on this stuff, uh, you cannot really address such an old issue with the freshness of mind that would come after 2020, I would say, two events. I think you should really try to go into the minds of people back again and see where the wounds are. Usually they are associated with the past, like I would say pride, the sorrow, um, I mean the psychology damage that we receive from massacres, both sides. From both sides, we have this um, we have this wounds that are not really easy to heal. So I think apart from time, we need political leaders being honest with one another on some several terms, and I think it is also difficult because once you are being honest on political level, you are being taken advantage of. So it is very hard to really uh, ask or expect someone to be honest regarding the political alliances that are possible to build over this issue. And it can really probably escalate to something bigger if uncontrolled, if done improperly. Like you can see countries like France being involved, you can see countries like Iran being involved, Russia is quite involved, Turkey is involved, European Union wants to be involved, US wants to be involved. So this is actually a breeding region for another war. You never know what can start from here. Because if you check the receipts, this region started the collapse of USSR. Ethnic nation was never an issue before. An ethnic question led to the collapse of the Soviet Union, actually. Of course, there are economic reasons, there are reasons about political uh, transparency, the glasnost era. But if you see what was the last dip, what was the last drop on that in that lake of collapse, that was Nagorno-Karabakh issue that they couldn't control.
Yeah.
Ethnic awakening movements happened all over in Baltics. You couldn't really stop anything after that. So that was like a chain reaction that was growing very fast and it was very hot. So you had
Yeah.
to extinguish it, and that they decided to break apart from the union.
Yeah. Well, and the Armenians evacuated Nagorno-Karabakh and moved out moved out. And I mean, do you think if they'd all stayed there, they would have been fine? Or
I think so, but the problem is how can you really tell this to them? Like they have been brought up in that psychology that everyone wants to kill them, while people like me, we have lost our homes there. My grandpa has home in Lachen. uh, all we want is peace too, as they do. It's just how you convince them overnight. It's impossible. So I wouldn't say we forced them to leave, but it was their decision. Not there. I would say that was the decision of Pashinyan to evacuate them, as you said. Uh, it's basically
the Armenian
known.
president? Yes.
It was like a risk averse option until things get cooled down, and I think we need like peace agreement before they can come back, and we never know whether that will happen even, to be honest. But I wish that happens very soon, and we do want that peace treaty to be finalized very quickly, and maybe in a matter of 1 or 2 years. That should be our priority, to sign it into the law as soon as possible.
Yeah, where do you think how capitalist or non-capitalist or is Azerbaijan? Do you think that, I mean, were there situations where, Armenians were paying higher taxes or getting less benefits, or do you think is it pretty capitalistic there or not, or what's the deal with that?
I think the economic system was not too much different. The only real difference would be, um I mean, being being Armenian does not qualify you to more taxes in Azerbaijan, especially considering that we did not treat those Armenians as non-citizens. They were treated as citizens. I mean, they have Azerbaijani passports. If you go back to 1980s, they had their passport saying citizen of Azerbaijan, SSR. So they were actually citizens of Azerbaijan. So that would be the same. So if you are a citizen, you get the same benefits, and you get the same taxation system. So regarding the capitalism, I wouldn't say Azerbaijan is too much like is too much market-based oriented. I would say it is mixed and hybrid, like US is. It depends on which sectors we have state intervention. It depends which sectors are freer. So, like, we have certain regulations in like security measures, like the ones that are like Patriot Act, and we also have state non-intervention in certain sectors like service sectors. So it really depends on which case we are talking. So yeah, we can really. The bottom line is, yeah, they would be treated the same. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's maybe they just don't believe that, but what about? But I also, Azeris have left Armenia as well, right? I mean, I know it's and I know there are Armenians, and their neighbor to the north that live there just fine. It seems it's rather unfortunate. I mean,
It is. It is. We also have many, uh, apart from IDPs that are from other from Nagorno Karabakh and the areas around it. We also have refugees that came from cities like Yerevan. We have other cities, so Western, Eastern Armenia. So we actually also from Zangezur. So many people I know that are from that used to live in those areas. They also actually have the same rights to go back, given that we are providing this uh, peaceful guarantees for the peace for each side. So that should be reciprocal process, I believe. But that should really be done very carefully, because 30 years, more than 35 years have passed, and then how do you manage new influx of people from nowhere? Let's say it's because it was considered long gone, to be honest. We would never think that this would be reconsidered. We have to reconsider who goes where, who lives where, and uh, that's kind of the tables are turned now. So we have to plan it together. There is no other way.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, yeah. I mean, what do what about what's going on? I know there are some other ethnic groups in the Caucasus region that aren't really recognized as independent countries either. I mean, like those like Kalmyks, Dagestan. Uh, what do you think of all that? I mean, the Chechens? Do you think they'll ever decide to become independent too, or do you think they'll still be a part of Russia? Why did they stay with Russia?
So do we talk about the do we talk about the unrecognized republics, or are we talking about the republics of Russia within Russia?
I guess we could talk about either one, really.
Yeah, because if you are talking about like countries, pseudo countries like South Ossetia, Abkhazia,
Yeah,
they are really political puppets of Russia. So I don't think there is any real movement there. uh, and I think Georgians know it, and then they will actually expect their uh, historic moment to seize them back. I don't know if that will ever happen. But regarding Dagestan and Chechens, I think it is very difficult to. It's very difficult to do something like that in Russia, after all, because if you take them separately, they cannot really provide for themselves. That's first, and they don't
yeah,
have much support from a side. Like I remember during Chechen War, the most of the support they've got was from Muslim countries. Uh, like uh, they wouldn't be supporting Chechens after the war, right? And the Chechens had oil, right? They could sell the oil, but honestly speaking, there was no plan. There was no detailed aspirations. It was just a spark of national awakening. So they would be like, let's secede and then we can decide for ourselves what to do with it. And that's never worked. That never works. And most of those countries, they don't have that uh, mentality of uh, mentality or mindset of nation states that we used to have: Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia. So we were ready for this. We were prepared for this process for at least half a century. For Armenia, I would say that was even a century long process. That's thoughts, that social uh, contraction, that social process should start and evolve, and then once it's done, you
mm,
will say, "Yeah, I'm done with Russia. I will just revolt against them." I don't see
yeah,
that in Chechens and other countries anymore.
yeah. And it's not very easy to do. If I visit Azerbaijan, where should I go? I mean, the capital's Baku. You can get to Baku from quite a few cities in Asia or Europe, but yeah,
How about Ganja? Ganja is really good.
yeah,
Go to Gabala. I think Gabala is really great for its nature. It depends when you come, actually.
yeah,
So if you come like winter, I would say don't go to Baku in winter. You can go to those mountainous cities, like they
yeah,
will have ski resorts.
yeah,
Especially Gabala is a good one. Zagatala, Gah, those regions are
yeah,
great uh, as summer places, so you can go there in the summer. Definitely come in Novruz. Okay, we have passed it already, but Novruz is really good time to be in Azerbaijan. If you go to western regions, you can see a lot of cultural uh,
yeah,
things happening. So yeah, I think definitely summer is the better time, and then
yeah.
spring is good also. Yeah, I mean, anytime you come, Azerbaijan will have some places where you can really enjoy time. Like we have climate 9 climatic types, so we have different climates entire year throughout year.
Yeah, certainly. You get the four seasons over there. You get snow, and of course the mountains go up to maybe I don't know 5 or 6 thousand meters at the highest points. I believe they're not quite as high as the Himalayas, but they're pretty high. And
You can do hiking definitely
oh yeah,
if
you
you.
do hiking. Yeah,
Yeah.
and one thing I forgot to mention earlier, too, with the Armenians seeing themselves as descendants of hike, they're not that far. You can see Mount Ararat from Armenia. So yeah, that's very interesting to see how religion plays a part. I was it was really beautiful there. It's I suppose and I know there's talk of putting this oil pipeline across the countries to go from the Caspian to that's been a big deal too. So I certainly hope we can maybe have peace there. Incidentally, Does Azerbaijan, do they think of themselves as more part of Europe or part of Asia?
That's a good question. So one of the books that raised this question is very famous Ali and Nino book. So Ali was like Azerbaijani from Shiranshah, and then Nino was Georgian princess. So their fight for struggle, their struggle for freedom, and that's actually unfolding in the same time. I mean, read
Yeah,
that book definitely, from Kurban Said. So the idea is, uh, that was exactly the period of 1918, 1919-ish. So when these republics were born, so that question were posed, like, is Azerbaijan like, because Ali, because even though he was like from Shiranshah is like older dynasty in Azerbaijan, like 15, 14. No, I'm sorry, earlier than that. That was since 9th century. It was like 860s. So that dynasty has been around for more than a millennia. And that guy, knowing that he's part of that uh, tradition, he actually liked European style, and then
yeah,
Paris. He liked freedoms that were brought from Azerbaijan, from West to Azerbaijan. The secularity he liked,
yeah,
but he liked it while he was reading books in the mosque. So that's the idea. Azerbaijan is really in the crossroads. It's definitely difficult to define what we are. Same with Turkey. If you read from Samuel Huntington, the Clash of
yeah,
Civilizations book, Turkey is definitely a torn country. Like, torn means they are torn apart in this question. Azerbaijan is not torn apart. I would say we're still quite Asian. We're still quite
yeah,
traditional. Turks have like 50 to 50 in that question. They
yeah,
have changed the linguistic
yeah,
structure just to adapt of Western style, and Azerbaijan never did that. We are more conservative. We are more traditional in that case, but we are leaning towards Western ideals for more than a century. So
yeah.
I think we have those philosophical ideas about West, and we do like them. But that wouldn't change the culture. That would never transform us to into something else. Definitely. So we are more preserving of those.
Is it still pretty traditional there? I mean, where men and women get married and have kids and stay married, or is it
Uh,
do you have or do you have or do you have,
which issue are
you
we
have
talking?
men and women going into each other's bathrooms like you do in America?
No, we men and women have different bathrooms in
Yeah, yeah,
Azerbaijan.
that's what I thought. Yeah, yeah,
Like, yeah, we are quite traditional in that sense, and I
yeah,
think we are gonna stay like this
yeah.
for long.
Another thing too is obviously there's the official policy and there's public opinion. What do people in Azerbaijan think about the Ukraine, the Ukraine war, and what do people in Azerbaijan think about what's happening with Gaza?
So that is quite split point. I would say there are people who support Israel in Gaza question because of Israel support to Azerbaijan and Armenian so in
Yeah,
Nagorno Karabakh war. But I see that as very shallow analysis point. So the people who go more historic, I would say they are pro-Palestine usually. But I would say most of the people are taking the emotional position. So if you are more religious, you will take the side of Palestine. If you are more nationalistic and anti-religious, you will be pro-Israel usually. People with deeper thoughts on this, they are quite two-state solution people. So you can really see that when you talk to them. I was in a conference on Palestine in Baku of United Nations. That was like in 2016, and then I was with Israeli delegation when they were invited over to a gay university. That's where I studied my bachelor degree. like my position was always uh, anti uh, colonization of Palestine. So I would always tell this to them that I am actually respecting them, but I really want two-state
Yeah.
solution for them. Regarding Ukraine, uh, I think most Azerbaijanis are with Ukraine. I don't see, and some people who analyze it as a minus point for us, they think Russia's victory is actually uh, favors us, because even though it sounds very counterintuitive, because if you think weaker Russia is better for Azerbaijan, but then you understand that then they will have to hold on to what they have, and they basically have some control over us. So basically, the more they are dealing with Ukraine, the less they think about the region. So
Yeah.
sometimes we think that it is better the things are staying the way they are. So it depends. So
Yeah.
it matters on the perspective of the person. So whatever you think is more important for Azerbaijan, and I think Azerbaijan is really um, supporting of Ukraine, and we saw so much support to Zelensky from our president too. Like we sent money, we sent gas, we still do, I think. And they also work with Turkey. That's another good point for supporting them, because uh, I would say they do cooperate with us sometimes on military
Yeah.
strategy too, because we had that experience of war with the use of autonomous vehicles. So apart from that, just politically, it's about perspective. It's about your interest.
Yeah. Certainly. Yeah. Well, that's been very interesting. Yeah. Also, I should ask. You said it's mostly secular. What is it? Are there more religious Shiites or Sunni, or is it some other sect?
So for Azerbaijan, what we call more radical is Sunni, because Azerbaijan is like a birthplace for Shiism in the world.
Okay.
So we have the leader called Shah Ismail first. He brought this 12 Imam thing, and then he brought Shiism to the world stage. Uh, and actually, that's how Iran became Shiist as well. So if you're Shia in Azerbaijan, you are just a normal Azerbaijani, like nothing different.
Yeah.
But if you are Sunni in Azerbaijan, you are more skepticized upon. So you are more like considered being part of the uh, Islamic
People
denominations like
trust you. Yeah.
Wahhabists
Yeah.
or some groups that are too radicalized. But overall, I would say you don't find too many of them in Azerbaijan.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So, well, this has been a pretty good place to go. You have anything else to say before we go?
Thank you for having me here. I think I value that we have met in DC, and
Yeah.
that I had the opportunity of knowing that there are people interested in the region. That I really think that if you someday get the chance to come to Azerbaijan, definitely uh, give me a call. We can see what we can do about it.
Is it pretty easy to get by on English there? Or I mean, I
Almost
okay. Yeah. I just
with
like to
Gen
ask.
Z easy.
I mean, there's some places. Yeah. Some places I'd still be kind of. I mean, and I'll go any place where it's Spanish too. But yeah, it's I just wanted to.
Spanish won't
Yeah,
help you.
there's no Spanish over there. But I mean, I'm talking about if I go to South America, if I go to Mexico, because
Oh, okay. But actually, even in the cities like very remote places
yeah,
like Hınalı is in Guba. That's like the place you wanna see. I saw that there is a
yeah,
tour guide who even perfectly speaks English. So
oh
I
yeah,
think because of tourism improving in the country, maybe one of the two persons will help you.
Oh yeah, tourism definitely helps you, and you can search for people who speak English on Airbnb and something like that. And Airbnb hosts, I've found, especially in places like this, they are so helpful. They go out of your way to help.
Awesome people, yeah, over
Yeah,
there.
I mean, I have to admit, I became very biased toward Armenia because I've had what I consider my second best Airbnb host in
Oh,
Yerevan. She was a lovely lady, just set me up with a guy to come. Obviously, I had to pay for it, but set me up with a guy to come pick me up at the airport. Then he took me driving around, and then he drove me to Tbilisi the next day. It was, and I had to pay him for all that, but it was so nice to just have all that arranged for me. It was like planning all my travels. She was like lovely people. It's
yeah, I mean, it's Caucasian is very so South Caucasia is very hospitable region. Like
yeah,
hospitality is very important in the region. So definitely, you will have people who are warm. You will have people who are accepting of guests and trying to show around for you.
yeah. Okay, well, yeah, well, it's been great having you. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, go buy my novel Escape from the Village, check out my Substack. Thank you, Suat Muradov. I'm Chris Baker, and we're out.
Thanks.